Please welcome your host, Tracy Stuckroth.
Thanks, John. I was very anxious to get this started, so I appreciate you holding off. And everybody, welcome, whether you're watching on live stream. I think I posted on Twitter and LinkedIn and a variety of other places. So thank you for being here, and everybody here who is in Zoom as well. Meeting menus catering to diverse dietary needs of our attendees. And in the chat, we've already been talking about different types of dietary needs that people have themselves and or their attendees have, their coworkers, et cetera. So this is what we're going to learn how to utilize them a lot over the next hour. And as I said just before we started, there's a lot to throw in here in an hour. I talk fast, so please raise your hand or ask John to say, hey, Tracy, ask Tracy this question, or come on and ask me the question. I am open to that. And I would really love to have your interaction with this webinar. So definitely throw out your challenges and questions that you have throughout the entire hour. And at the end of the hour, or near the end of the hour, about 50 minutes in, I will share some links with you that you can utilize to help move forward even more. So today we're going to learn about the different diverse dietary needs of our attendees. We're going to learn how to create safe and inclusive dining experiences. And we're going to learn how to potentially use these dietary restrictions as a positive revenue generator, as well as employee retention, because it really does help create sense of a belonging. All right, so I want to bring up this slide. This next slide has an email that I got from one of my friends, Jack, one of my clients, I should say, friend and client. And this is the list of dietary needs he had on from his event this past week or this past month. And it's crazy. He's like, how do I manage this? What do I do? What is there? How do I work with this? And so he and I chatted through this and how we did that. And it's a real challenge. How many of you have a list like this when you get your dietary restrictions from your attendees? Allergic to mushrooms, allergic to mint, no fish, no seafood, but can eat and cannot eat spicy foods. So Carla said every single meeting, often, yes. And we get this list, and how do you manage that, right? It's really kind of mind-boggling. So going to the question that I asked before we went live here is what are your biggest challenges with dietary restrictions? And there's three ways that I see people who come into this come to this webinar for this reason. Are you overwhelmed by the dietary needs of your attendees, and like the expression on this woman's face is, oh my God, what do I do with this? I've got somebody with this and this and this, or are you just a little bit frustrated by it, right? Because it can be frustrating going, oh my gosh, and my chef is not doing this, and how do I do this? Jennifer says satisfying everyone while staying in budget is really a huge challenge as well. And then the third way I see people coming in here is that they're super excited. How many of you are excited about planning food and beverage, and you find these dietary restrictions as an opportunity for having fun and recreating something out of a standard banquet menu? Let me know if you're one of those excited people. I think most people are number 1 and 2. So share in the chat which one of you are. Are you number 1, overwhelmed? Are you frustrated, or are you excited? John is 1, 2, and 3. Meg is frustrated. Jennifer, overwhelmed and frustrated. Okay. I think that's 1, 2, and 3. Yay. I like that. And I think it does come down to really making sure that we are still excited about this, and making sure that our partners that we're utilizing to create catering menus are excited about there's my friend Dana Sage. Typically she's number 1. Protein in the vegetarian options, that's a great thing to be worried about for sure. Carla likes to plan menus, and mostly shocked than overwhelmed. Heather, tell me about that. Shocked. Can you come on here and tell me what you mean by shocked? Unmute yourself if you don't mind.
Hey, I just mean I get such complicated allergies usually to something remote like passion fruit or avocados.
Okay. Yeah. And we think that there's like, how can somebody be allergic to an avocado or whatever? But just so you know, there's more than 170 foods that people can become allergic that are known to cause allergic reactions. And there's 9 that cause 90% of all allergic reactions. And the reason that I know this is that actually back in 2003, I was diagnosed with a food allergy myself. I am a meeting planner. I have been a meeting planner since 1990. And when I got diagnosed with a food allergy back in 2003, I was planning 100 events a year. And I'm like, how am I going to eat at all these events? I don't know how to do that. Right. Especially when you get, here's the standard menu, order from this, pick from this. What are you going to do? And so it took me taking an online course or taking a course to say, hey, I want to start this business. I want to educate our industry on how to feed me. And actually the 100 other people that were in the audience with me, but also, the 32,000 Americans that have food allergies, plus the 200, and if I do my math correctly, about 200 million people worldwide that have food allergies. And actually, I think I should have said 32 million US. So that's what I've been doing for the last 12 years. And that's where it brought me to this website to help share with you ways that I've figured out to accommodate some of these needs. So besides being frustrating and overwhelming, how do dietary needs impact your planning process? Does it take more time? Does it take more money? Are you worried about the legal aspects of it? Let me know in the chat, or again, feel free to pop in here and explain something to me. Heather said a corn allergy was, shocking to her. More money, more consideration, more time for sure, Jennifer, because we're figuring out how to manage these dietary restrictions. Carla said all of the above, for sure. And properties are price gouging with special menus. And okay, Stephanie, that is a huge issue. And we need to educate them that they can't. And I say that they can't because for individuals who have medically necessary dietary restrictions like food allergies, celiac disease, diabetes, they're protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so they can't, unless it's an undue burden to make a meal that's gluten-free, they cannot charge you extra for that because that's not an undue burden, right? And so it's really looking at, is it costing them $5,000 more to make a gluten-free meal than it is $5? If it's only $5 difference, they can't price gouge you on that. So I'm going to figure out how I can make that happen and help us save some money. And Kendra, you just said price gouge. Okay, so I think you were looking at Stephanie's comment on the price gouging. We need to make sure that we're not doing that. So we'll talk through some of this today as well. Okay, so when we're thinking about different dietary restrictions, I look at it in a variety of different ways. It's very diverse. Right? You've got individuals who are, eat a specific way because of where they're from and their cultural background, because they have food allergies, because they have another medical condition such as celiac disease or diabetes, or maybe they're one of the individuals now who are really focused on climate change and they want to make sure that they're eating their food choices are not impacting the environment. And I think a statistic that I recently heard was 52% of Americans are really making choices that based on climate change. So that's really kind of an impact as well. And then we've got, let's see, medically necessary and disabilities. If you're looking at this slide in the middle, or the picture in the middle of the woman, the person utilizing the wheelchair, is how do they get to the plate? It's not just what's on the plate. It's how do they get to the plate? Can everybody actually access the plate via the pathways that we create or the room design that we've set up? And also 100% religious-based reasons, right? I did an event in April where it was Passover and Ramadan. And how do you manage those dietary needs and preferences, or I don't want to call a religious-based dietary a restriction, but it's something that they follow and they believe in. And how do you manage those? And Hello, Joan. I'm so glad that you're joining. Given the state of labor and food costs, it may not be under the aid. Well, that's a good point. Dietary restrictions may be coming in at a higher, well, food is coming in at a higher cost 100% because of food costs right now. So we have to pay that attention to it. And just so you know, everybody who's watching live, we're captioning since hearing and fast talking is difficult for some of us. So I apologize that I'm talking fast. Hopefully that the live captioning is capturing my my speech, and be sure to make sure that captions are available by clicking the live transcript, and it will show subtitles under my my image here. So make sure you've done that if you need it. So all of these different this food diversity that we have, whether it's from religious or medical or lifestyle preferences or choices, we need to really learn how to accommodate them. And, you know, there's vegetarian and there's seafood allergies and there's nut allergies and sesame allergies, and somebody who's pescatarian, and somebody who has a tomato allergy, or they're in Europe. How many of you welcome guests from the European Union? If you do, and I know Heather's from there, the laws around there and labeling is much different than here in the United States. The labeling here in the US is only on prepackaged foods. It does not include unpackaged foods like banquet buffets, but in the European Union it does. So for whoever, I forgot who said that they bring a lot of international guests in, that's really important to understand that if they're used to seeing the food allergies labeled on their food that they're eating in wherever they live in Europe, then they probably are wanting to have that here in the US. So we need to work on how to do that. Dana just planned an event in Europe, and it was much easier to plan over there because of their laws. Dana, good to know. And I'm glad that the chefs are working on that. I actually did an event years ago in Scotland, and the only person in the room that knew about the laws was the caterer. None of the meeting planners knew about it. And the caterer was like, please let me know about your dietary restrictions because I could lose my business if I don't accommodate them. So learning how to do that is really important. And as Heather pointed out, it's 14 allergens in the EU that are regulated, versus here in the United States, it's only 9. So when we're looking at a banquet menu, this is what we have. We just see this banquet menu here, right? Then nothing is labeled. How are we expected to go about, you know, understanding that, asking questions? And it's a big challenge, but learning how to read these. But queso fresco, fresh cilantro, or that's a tortilla soup with queso fresco. So what does can anybody tell me what hidden allergens would be in that soup? Cheese, good. Yep. Dairy, yep. And onion, definitely, for sure. And then maybe some broth, and it doesn't say chicken on it. So it doesn't say it's a chicken tortilla soup. So I'm wondering if they use chicken broth or vegetable broth. Heather's gluten and Inga both said gluten 100%, because probably they're putting some flour in there to thicken it up, definitely. And broth might not be an allergen, but a restriction, like meat-based broth, 100%. But if you're looking at that, well, it could be a vegetarian-based soup, but it's not labeled that. So if you're trying to feed your vegetarians that soup, you need to definitely ask the question, is that chicken broth or vegetable broth used in that, or even a beef broth? So I want to show a couple of other images of some photos here. Michael Clark I just want to make a point that venues and hotels are willing to accommodate dietary needs if they are given those needs with a longer lead time to prepare it. 100% agree. And we're going to talk about that a little bit this afternoon. Yeah, it is this afternoon. So, but this picture of this breakfast muffins, what kind of allergens do you think that are in these muffins? And does anybody have challenges getting fresher muffins? Nuts, yep, we caught those almonds on that front one. Wheat, yep. Gluten, nuts. You probably, if they're pre-packaged muffins from one of the food service providers, there's probably soy in there. There's probably milk as well as eggs. Heather, you got it all down there listed. Eggs, milk, meat, and then probably soy. And now let's look at this quinoa burger. Chocolate, dairy, blueberries. Blueberries, I hope nobody's allergic to blueberries. If you are, please send them to my way because I will eat them all. But these quinoa burgers here, what allergens do you think are in these quinoa burgers? I mean, you think they're great because they're probably listed as vegan, right? So you're going to have those. Well, they're listed as vegan, but allium definitely, sesame most likely, because you can see those little flecks in the sesame in the burger itself. You've got gluten because it's on the bun. So how thinking about that, just because something's vegan doesn't necessarily mean that it meets everybody else's dietary restrictions, because a lot of vegan options are made with soy and nuts, tree nuts and peanuts and gluten, because those are vegan. So how do you manage that? Food coloring in the buns, potentially, that's very true. And somebody who's allergic to food colorings might not like that as well, or cannot consume that as well. And then we've got the next picture I wanted to show you. Is the salad, spinach beet salad with candied walnuts and blue cheese. What would you ask your chefs to do differently with this salad if you were serving it? And the fact that you can actually say to somebody, hey, we need to make a change to this. What would you do? Nuts and cheese are on the side, separate out the allergens, definitely. And can we put the nuts and the cheese on the buffet, on the table in front of everybody, so that the salad is presented with the beets and the spinach, and everybody can add the accompaniments together. Amy, that's exactly what you just said. And John put in here, build your own salad. Dana, that's interesting. Somebody's allergic to field greens. We have to choose lettuce carefully. That's a really interesting thing. And it's important to understand. There's a story. I went to a restaurant years ago when the iceberg lettuce recall was happening, right? Or no, the romaine lettuce recall was happening. And I asked the server, because all 3 menu items, salad said romaine salad. I'm like, well, what about the romaine? And she's like, what are you talking about? Right. So she had no clue. And so she actually had to bring over the general manager to say, hey, we've checked the sources of our romaine. We're not in that recall. You're safe to eat these salads. But that is really important to understand and ask those questions. And Heather, that's a really good question. What's in the salad dressing? If they're not making their salad dressing fresh, I'd run downstairs and get something out of the refrigerator, but there's probably milk and soy and gluten in those prepackaged salad dressings. So asking the questions about how is the dressing made is a really important one. Thanks for bringing that up, Heather. This next one with the grilled sliced pork and Thai chili sauce with garlic bread. This is a really interesting, how many of you serve pork, anything pork with your events? One planner that I know that does a lot of international doesn't serve pork or nuts or alcohol with any of his events because of the international basis. And Diana said never serve pork. That's really occasionally. And it depends on where, if you really know your clientele. I'm sure you're going to serve pork at the National Pork Board convention, right? But you're not necessarily going to serve it for other events. Lisa, thank you for joining us from Facebook. I really appreciate that. Breakfast is somewhat difficult to do without a pork option. Well, you can do some turkey bacon. You can do some vegan bacon. I know there's a recipe for some carrot bacon, things like that. So there are options to replace the bacon, even though everybody wants bacon. You can do that. Carla, if they don't have bacon, people would not come. It's amazing. And I had listened to a podcast a month ago about how pork was really has blown up into our society that we always have to have pork, but we don't. And definitely put it on the side. And if you're serving it, there's one event that I did that the pork was served on, and you might see this often, pork was served on top of bread slices, and they've got the bread slices at the bottom of the bacon pan to soak up the grease from the bacon. Well, that just made the bacon not gluten-free. So paying attention to that is really important as well, because actually at that event, we actually had somebody who was severely allergic to wheat and could not participate in that, could not have bacon, even though he loves bacon. Now, I'm going to jump to the allergens in alcohol. So we have to think about what we're also serving in our bars. It's not just what we're serving on the plate, right? There are beverages that we serve on our buffets, in our bar events that contain wheat. They contain different allergens, and it is not regulated by any government to say what allergens are in alcohols or beverages that we serve. So it's really important to ask those questions, because they're and to understand that some of the alcohols are not vegan as well, and that's from the filtration process that they go through. There could be eggs in there could be fish in there, and it's really thinking through and asking the questions of your bar food and beverage managers on what alcohol is being served. Gluten-free options, religious-based reasons people don't drink. What can we offer as far as mocktails are concerned, or zero-proof beverages? Heather, really good point. In egg and cocktails, there's a couple of different allergens or actually cases that have come out from eggs being served in alcoholic beverages, and they weren't told, and they've gone into anaphylactic shock. And it's a hidden ingredient in a lot of dishes as well, cooking with it. And one woman I had at an event in April, she said, if there's any kind of wine in anything that I'm eating or drinking, I will projectile vomit on you. And she was an 80-year-old woman who had this allergen since she was like 4 or 5 years old. So she knows what happens to her when it happens. So then when you look at this non-alcoholic beverage list that came from a current catering menu out of Baltimore, I mean, there's nothing, I think it was out of Baltimore. It's in that quote that John posted for me, these are sugar bombs. We also have to think about how much sugar we're feeding people through these beverages. The standard sodas that we normally serve, we need to be asking, hey, can you get me a sparkling water there's tons of different sparkling water brands out there right now, right? That don't have a lot of sugar in them and are telling you what's in the ingredients. Actually ask the questions. Heather, Stephanie just posted that somebody had an allergic reaction to coffee since the caterer used eggshells to filter coffee. Interesting. I've never heard that before. That is a new one for me. Wow. And that is really kind of interesting to think about, because you don't know how it's doing. And that reminds me of something, a friend of mine who's going to be on my podcast, and I think it's next week, the alpha gals. Alpha gal is an allergy to mammal meat, or mammals, I should say. And so they can't have any meat from mammals, nor can she have any byproducts from mammals. So she can't have the dairy, she can't have bacon, she can't have anything like that. But she's also to the point that she's realized she can't actually buy vegetables from the local farmers market, because they're utilizing fertilizer made from eggshells and eggs aren't mammals, but from beef manure and things like that. And it's actually going into the vegetables, and she can't eat it. So she's having to actually look for non-organic fruits and vegetables to eat, and or those that are made in vertical farming. And then Stephanie asked, how do you even do that? It's just, that's a good question. It's really hard to ask, but it's saying, hey, can you tell me the source of your food and beverage? And sometimes it's calling up the manufacturers and asking, and it's not that dog, who's the dog that the can of beans, right? The dog is the only one that has the recipe. The family recipe is the dog, and he's never going to give it away. We have to ask the questions of what's hidden in those foods, and calling the manufacturers. I think it is Frank's. Thanks, Jennifer. And some of them won't give you the ingredient list, right? But you have to say, and that's actually why sesame is now becoming the 9th top allergen here in the United States, and required to be labeled on all all prepackaged food as of January 1. And when it says spices or hidden or spice flavors, things like that, if sesame is in those, it now has to be called out and labeled on prepackaged foods. Bushes. Oh, Juliana, I think it's bushes. You're correct. Sorry about that, everybody. I name branding here. Okay, so now let's jump to some secrets that I have for you, right? Talking about service levels. We as planners, and let me know if you're a planner or a supplier in the chat here. Raise your hand. What role you play in planning menus. So mostly planners, planner, you're both, Jennifer. Okay, great. Okay. And that's really important. So now when we're thinking about service levels, we as planners think the service level comes from just the people that we're hiring, right? It actually comes from us as well. So how can you create a better service level as a planner in helping your attendees eat safer at events? And that's through your registration system, right? What kind of information are you putting on your registration, and how are you asking the dietary needs of your attendees through the online registration? Are you, asking with an open-ended box? Are you asking with check boxes? And then when you, as a service level to your clients, as who is that person up front that said that, hey, if we know in advance, we can't, the hotels do want to do that. Where is that? Who is that person that said that? They do want to accommodate the needs up front. Michael said that. Thank you. And Stana, thank you for the drop down question in the registration, following with a text box. Love you, ma'am. Thank you very much. That's a great way to do that. But then when you're reporting out, is this the kind of report that you give to your food providers and say, hey, Michael Clark, here, figure it out on your own, right? Or are you consolidating that list, right? And saying, hey, I've got 5 gluten-frees, I've got a couple of people with seafood allergies, and then really calling it out and saying, hey, can we remove, what's one of the ones on there that's food allergies to carrots? Can we remove carrots from all of the menu items that we're serving, right? That's upping your service level. But it really does start with that registration question. Ours looks like yours. We group them and then we talk to the chef. That's a great way to do that, Carla. And really thinking at it and take the outliers out. Like there's that allergy to carrots or the allergy to MSG, pull those out. Nobody's going to know the difference that there's no carrots in anything that you served over the next 4 days, right? Chef might, when he's cooking that, garlic and carrots and onions together, right? Pulling that out, but making sure that those are pulled out, right? But doing that way. What kind of food presentation can you raise the level of that service, right? There's this table here in the John, will you go back one slide for me, please? This table here, thank you. This table here, right? What's the height of that table? If you think about that person who utilizes a wheelchair or utilizes a scooter, can they actually reach the food and beverage on that table? And I don't necessarily think that you have to have every single thing on a flat table, but I went to an event this summer and the table was actually to the height of my chest. So nobody, could have reached that and seen that. So thinking about putting foods on the lower levels as well as the higher levels is really, really an important thing to think about when we're looking at the service levels of that way. Staff training, what service levels can you ask of your catering partners? Let's see, I'm the CSM for a hotel, and we try to eliminate allergens completely if we can, so there isn't a risk. Love that. Thank you very much. It's really an important way to do that. It's an open-ended, Jennifer saying, open-ended box. I have noticed that supplier many people work with, I'm mostly non-professional, actually don't ask their guests, which shocks, 100% shocking. We need to make sure that we're communicating that. And events that I do, actually, I say, hey, I need to talk to you about this. What are you doing about the dietary restrictions? Giving your attendees that avenue to ask questions, that's another way to raise your service level as a planner and actually as a supplier, right? The venues saying, hey, do you have any dietary restrictions? We know that you will have some. So can we ask that question? Making sure that you're doing that. That really raises the bar to your service levels. All right. So let's see. Secret number 2 is customization. How do you do that customization? You really have to look at what the host, your client, if you're a third party planner or if you're an independent planner, what is your client's expectations of the food and beverage? Do they want that high end experience, or are they just wanting, let's just order what's on the buffet and go with it, which is a lot right now with the prices of food. And so thinking about how you can visualize that, what that client wants, but also accommodating the dietary restrictions is really important. And the guest expectations. If you ask the question, even if you've asked it as an open-ended box, you have an expectation there. Heather, you would have an expectation, or I think my friend Sarah popped in here too. If they've asked the questions, do you then have an expectation that they're going to be, the dietary needs are going to be met?
I love Heather says you're about to read my mind.
and my friend Kyle, he went to an event, and I think it was actually a food allergy conference that he went to, and they asked the questions, but they didn't follow through with it. So why are you asking the questions in the first place? Right. So that goes back to that raising the expectation or raising the customer service level, but then customizing it and making sure that it happens. And encourage them to ask, and provide an experience that they're willing to share, right? They're willing to say, hey, I do have this need, and what can you provide for me? Saying we're welcoming everybody of all abilities and all dietary needs. How can we help you eat at this event and participate in this event successfully? Local flavors, how can you incorporate the local flavors of where you're meeting? And that is really particularly important right now when you're talking about the cost of food, because you don't necessarily want to pay for the cost of food being transported from California to Georgia when you could actually get that local kale, or local carrots from a local farm. And again, that does depend on the size of your group and who your catering partner is, right? Some of them have different, hey, I have to buy this certain butter. My butter's not available. There's butter available, but it's not their butter that's available. So actually really asking those questions and saying, how can we reduce cost? And then the food quality, making sure that the quality of the food is good, because we don't want anything that's just, during the pandemic, we were serving prepackaged foods. I think, and I say during the pandemic, I'm sure that we still are feeling parts of that pandemic, but we're actually seeing a lot more food and beverage coming out and not being prepackaged. So how can you accommodate that? Even if you are serving prepackaged foods, find some options that meet different dietary restrictions. Is it kosher? Is it dairy-free? Is it gluten-free? Ask for, if you've got a favorite bar that you eat, or that meets these different dietary needs, request that of your catering partner, saying, hey, can you find these? Can you source these? Or bring them in. Get that organization to sponsor that, right? Thinking about those secret customization options. And really thinking about, the quality of the food, the local flavor, that really does enhance it, and it brings freshness to it. To the point that even my sister-in-law last week, she's like, where did you get that lettuce that you brought me for Thanksgiving? And I'm like, I got it from the local farmer's market. She's like, that lasted longer than what I bought at the grocery store in the plastic containers, which was shipped from California, and it was picked probably a week and a half before and then shipped over. And my lettuce that I had in this bag from the local farmer's market lasted 2 weeks. And she was really amazed by that, and is actually asking me to bring some for Christmas next week. So looking and incorporating that is number 2 secret. But also looking at, it does come into with the customization here is I was doing this event for a client in Atlanta, and we were having coffee and donuts. And where did my slides go, John?
Go ahead, Tracy. I just focused on it a little bit.
Oh, you focus on me. Okay. So sorry, that scared me. I was doing an event for my clients in Atlanta, and we were having a coffee and donut program. And the day before, we actually had popcorn. And the popcorn, we rented the popcorn machine, and one of the employees said to me, hey, do you have any popcorn without butter on it? And I'm like, the popcorn automatically, that works in the machine automatically came with that flavor packet that already has the butter on it. And I went like, oh my gosh, I do this for a living and I didn't even think about that, right? So the next day when we were having coffees and donuts, we were having coffee and donuts, we made sure that we created and we provided for them with different options. And the slide before had the coffee and donuts thing, but here on this slide, you can notice between the two donuts there that there is now vegan and gluten-free and soy-free options. And I went up to that gentleman and just said, hey, make sure that you come down for the coffee and donuts and the games that we're doing, because we've got the vegan and the nut-free and the soy. He's like, no, you don't. And I'm like, yeah, I do. I said, I went to this Sally's Bakery and I found them. And he's like, you're kidding me, right? We had people clamoring down there going, where did you buy this? Can I buy this? Can I buy this? And that was that customization. They're like, thank you so much for providing us options. And then they really came down and participated in the games that we had, for that learning experience. Let's see. DC who wrote Christmas is next week. Yes, Christmas is next week. Sorry. Nicole, thanks for joining us on Facebook. Really trust that, or really appreciate you joining us. And John wrote in here, food trust is the result of customization. And it really is, because we're so used to, individuals with dietary restrictions are so used to not being able to eat. My friend Murray Hall, who's a chef in Toronto, mentioned this to me, and I think I mentioned it at the very, very beginning for anybody who missed it, is that he started making everything that he does gluten-free and dairy-free. He replaces the wheat flour in sauces with rice flour or coconut flour or something, right? And then he replaces the milk with an oat milk. And he had this client or this guest come, hey, chef, can you give me a special plate? I need to eat. And he's like, well, you can eat everything. Or he asked her dietary needs and she's like, gluten-free, dairy-free. And he's like, you can eat everything. And she's like, no, I can't eat that. And I can't eat that. And he's like, yes, you can, because I made it gluten-free and dairy-free. She's like, what? And so she felt like, oh my gosh, I can actually do this. It really is a really good opportunity. And that actually helped, her trust not only, but it also improved her thought process or her thoughts about that event itself and that sponsor or that organization that was doing that. Now, and then let's jump to secret number 3 is these inclusive menus. And I've talked about it a little bit here in a variety of different ways here, but looking at these images here is, that first image there is the coffee station. And that was at a hotel event that I went to. And again, this one was very high, and somebody utilizing a wheelchair or a scooter, they're going to be hard pressed to get that coffee cup and then get that coffee because it was really, really high. Right. And how do you make sure that you've got it on different level tables? And if you look closely, there's a smaller table in the back that is a little bit lower. So that could be an option, saying, hey, can I help you around here to the other side of the table? Accessibility. I mentioned it was not just about what's on the plate, but how do you get to the plate? So if you're having a beach party, do you have the beach wheelchairs that individuals could utilize, and get to them? Because if they're taking the walkway out, what happens to them when they get to the end of the walkway? Have you put boards down through the entire event on the beach sand? How have you done that? And then you're labeling. How are you labeling? Are you saying that, is it gluten-free? Is it dairy-free? Does it contain meat? Does it contain soy? How are you doing that? And the next slide, I've got a picture. This is my friend Carolyn posted this picture from this property that did it. And she was really excited because they posted it. They had done it this way. So white chocolate and cherry scones. It's not tagged being gluten-free, vegetarian, or vegan, but it is tagged to contains dairy, eggs, and soy. What is there? Does anybody find anything wrong with this sign?
Feel free to unmute.
Yeah, unmute and let me know what you think of this sign. Not vegetarian. Yep, it should probably be vegetarian. I don't know what they would put in a scone that would make it non-vegetarian.
Maybe they filtered it through eggshells. Oh, they checked egg, darn it.
They did. Heather wrote, don't display buffets decorated with egg, shellfish, or bread. Well, that would be one, is to avoiding that. But what I find really interesting is that they didn't note that it was gluten-free. So that to me would say that it contains gluten, But where on that bottom section of that sign, they don't even have gluten as an option or wheat as an option to even say that it is. So somebody who's gluten-free, they don't even know that, they don't know what to think of that, right? Because it's not labeled that it contains, and it's not labeled that it's free of. So really going through and making sure that, when you're doing your banquet event orders, making sure that you tell your catering teams, your catering partners, that you want it labeled for dairy, egg, fish, all of those there, plus wheat, right? If it contains that, right? And then what you want it to say if it's free of, it's gluten-free, it's dairy-free, it's vegan, it's vegetarian. You can 100% tell your catering companies what to label for it. And if you need the help with that, if they need the help with that, then work with them. But also note, this is an important thing to note, is that these labels are done by the front of the house staff. They're not done by the culinary team in the back of the house. So you need to have these cards presented to you by the front of the house staff, the banquet captains, and then have the culinary team correct them or go through them. And Joan really made a really good point. Font size is important, especially if this was displayed in an evening function. For your guests who are visually impaired, the minimum point size for anything is 18-point font. So this is probably a 12 or 13-point font, maybe, if we're lucky, that white chocolate is probably the 18-point font, but you can actually make it and it looks decent to do it that way.
Well, Jennifer's got a great comment.
What about using images rather than words? That's a really good point for individuals and or colors, right? Some people are colorblind, so they might, and I don't know the distinctions with color blindness, but can they see the red dots on that? How are they doing that? And if you have guests that have coming from different backgrounds and don't speak English or wherever you are, can the icons be used differently? I do suggest that those icons are quite clear. And let's see. Oh, I don't have one over here. So that they're easy to understand and easy to read, and that you provide a key, a legend to what all those icons mean, right? Because Neff, and Heather pointed out, there is no standard on that. So, but making sure, I don't have a picture of one here. I can run off and go get it, but I'm not going to do that. Make sure your icons are simple. I know that there was somebody that put in an event I attended years ago, they had a fish on top of a plate, and that was their icon for the fish. When you're looking at it really, really small, you can't tell what that is because it's a fish on a plate. So looking at being very, very specific. And that just kind of goes into how we communicate with each other, right? And what we hear and what we see. And if I say hello to you, where is the guest? Is that guest hearing konnichiwa or hola, or how are they responding to me in that? And we need to learn how to communicate the best for our attendees. And it's that string with the cans, right? Looking at how's the best way to communicate with our attendees. Jennifer posted a QR code might be nice in addition to more details of basic signage. That's 100% true. That works really well. But when you're looking at QR codes, you have to really understand who your clientele is as well. Are they used to using QR codes? QR codes were really good during the pandemic because we didn't have menus, but the age of your attendee base, probably understanding those QR codes. And is that QR code for every single banquet item, right? Because you don't want Heather or John or Linda to walk through the buffet and have to do a QR code for every single food item that's on the buffet label, right? So can you do that in advance? Can you put that on your meeting app, the list of what's being served at each food function? Stephanie, good point. Juggling a QR code with your plate and your phone, going through a buffet. 3 years ago, I tore my rotator cuff and I went to a dinner party with my parents, and our friend Rich, here's your steak, Tracy, here, and here's your plate with your steak on it. And I'm like, that's great, Rich, but can you cut it for me? And as I was going through the buffet on his kitchen counter, there was no place for me to put my plate down so that I could then scoop, the whatever else was being served to put on my plate, right? So when we're thinking about catering buffets, there's usually not a lot of room to put your plate down. So that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up, Stephanie, on that. And a friend of mine years ago, I met her at an event, and she utilizes a wheelchair. She had actually been hit by an 18-wheeler, and I was lucky to actually have met her because she shouldn't have been alive, but she had to take go to elevator back of the house, take a hallway down, take an elevator down, take another hallway in the back of the house to another elevator to get to the food function. And when she wheeled up to the buffet, there was nobody there to help serve her. And the food, the tables here, let's say the tables here, and the shaving dishes were up here, and she's utilizing a wheelchair, and she can't, scoop to get up here to get that. So really coming to think about that. So Heather said, I always recommend that they avoid the buffet. That's a really good point. But if you can, if that food allergy is an outlier, say it's not gluten, right? If that allergy is an outlier, and you can say, hey, we have made this event completely apple free. John, let's go to slide 28 there. If we've made this event complete, not that one, next one, apple free, then that person should feel comfortable going through that buffet. And that's a true story. This quote and this apple, I had a woman who was allergic to apples, so much so that she had an allergic reaction to eating a banana, that the apples were in the banana was in a bowl, that apples were in the bowl the day before. And she's like, the blessing that you have given me by making sure that our entire event was apple free, except for, our iPhones and our iPads and things like that. It brought her to tears. And she's like, you have no idea how I hate this allergy, right? It's not like she went to the store and bought it. And it's not like she can go to the store and return it. She can't fathom having to do this. But the gratefulness that she shared with us for having accommodated it. And that meant Chef and I spent a good 30, 40 minutes going through all of the sauces that he had on packaged sauces that he bought, like, herbs and nuts, like teriyaki sauce or something like that, right? He was having his team scan in the label for us, and then we were saying, oh nope, there's apple cider vinegar in that. We're pulling that sauce out, right? That's to the level of detail that sometimes you have to go to. All right, Dana.
Quick question. Yeah. So Dana says, I think we do a bad job of food labeling when it comes to formal plated dinners. The menu card has the menu and then vegetarian options available upon request. Granted, the chef knows about our allergies and what table they are at, but I think we should do more. What are your suggestions, Tracy?
I think we definitely need to do more. We need to, say to the individuals, do you have, meal cards? And we'll pull this one up. Do you have meal card for somebody that, has a peanut allergy that you can give to this person to hand to the server and saying, hey, I'm Tracy, I have a peanut allergy. Please bring him a meal that's peanut free. The menus are on there. I think it's communicating in advance, hey, this meal is going to be free of these top things. I do understand where it gets a little, I don't have any menu item. You don't want to put this kind of list on here, right? But can the banquet captain have this in hand, right? This is all of the ingredients in what we're serving. Or kind of going back to that thing I said a little while ago, is making sure that the event is free of those top allergens, going ahead and eliminating those top allergens across the board from every single thing that you're serving, like these apple here, right? Making sure that it's not in the room. Stephanie, we post menus and signage at various locations so we can get attention. 100% agree. And that's really important. And it really is. And I like the fact that you put it in various locations. And it's really about how we do it, what we're doing, what we're communicating, and why we're communicating that. And with this woman with the apple allergy, we actually put a note out that said, hey, everyone, we've got somebody here with this severe apple allergy. Please do not bring any apples into the meeting space. We want to make sure that she feels safe, right? So we communicated that on the event app. We did an email. The MC made an announcement at the beginning of the event and how we were doing that. So when we're thinking about, who and what and why and how and when, we need to make sure that we're communicating that information to to our attendees. And that's where, it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot more effort than what we're thinking about, and it does create a partnership, and it does come from the RFP all the way through the culinary team and the execution of that, the banquet staff. And that's where, where I think, and correct, Humana, did I say that right? Humana. I'm mutilating your name. 100% in the RFP.
Jimena said thanks.
You're welcome. It really does come to doing this, and that's why and it's my feeling, and I have this new course. It's called Every Meal Matters. Not new, it's called Every Meal Matters. And that's where we really dive into, where in your event planning are you, because I know we've got some people from the University of Michigan here, where in that planning process are you doing events for students? Are you doing events for the chancellor, right? Are you doing events for, who are you doing events for at your venues? And this course really breaks it down into a variety of everywhere that we see food and beverage in our events. It's so that we can create that safe and sustainable experience. You'll learn about the different dietary restrictions and vegetarian, pescatarian, paleo. What are they all doing? How do you do that some more board, safely and for everyone, right? And how do you incorporate all of those different needs? It covers the food and beverage trends. It covers what questions to ask, because what somebody asked, how do you know what they're serving? It's like, how do you ask that question? That's what this course shows you how to do. I'm reading some chat messages over here while I'm talking about this. Events for researchers from all over the US, as well as sometimes overseas. It's really important to figure that out. And Kim says what I serve and what versus my undergrads versus grad students, and then faculty and staff. It really does make that challenge. And for those at universities, I think you have a little bit of more impetus on there. There's a law, or not a law, but the Justice Department was reached out to based on some students who were required to eat on campus. And when they were required to eat on campus and eat the meal plan, they weren't being accommodated for. And they took that to the Justice Department, and a university was sued for that and fined $50,000 and had to revamp their entire culinary program to make sure that the dietary needs of the students were met. And you have to think about that really when you're going through your catering of events for them. And that's what this course really covers for you, whether you're a on-campus planner or you're a corporate planner. We have video lessons and audio lessons, all with me, as well as some private invitation only, conversations with chefs and food and beverage directors. But the 8 modules, as you can see there, it covers the opportunities and the obligations that we have. What are all the different dietary needs? How to strategically plan from the RFP all the way through execution. And execution is module 8 there. It's like, what do? You've come to the day of, and you've got this guy who, has this wheat allergy, and he's walking through the buffet and he can't eat the bacon because there's bread at the bottom of it. How do you manage that? Or you get the banquet captain who says, well, I don't eat, or I don't cook. How do I know what's in the food? Right? How do you respond to those things? And how can you be very strategic in your planning up front about that? And with so the course is valued at almost $3,000, and you've got 8 modules. You've got lifetime access to the course content. You get CEU credits if you're needing those for your workplace accreditations or any certifications that you need. You have one-on-one access to me. and you have an how-to library. Heather posted in here, it's a duty of care that we have as a meeting planner. Dietary Needs has really elevated that to our duty of care. It's not just about figuring out what hotel we're staying in or what liability waiver that we're having our attendees sign for jumping out of an airplane or what. This food and beverage is really part of our duty of care, and we need to understand that. A couple of bonuses that you get with this course as well is, again, 8 weeks of live Q&A. So instead of just watching videos and listening to videos, we actually have conversations, and we're all asking each other questions and how you do that. There's a private members only Facebook group that you can, again, share ideas and ask questions amongst each other. And you actually have access to that for lifetime access. And then I mentioned it slightly a few minutes ago, but you have one-on-one discussions with industry experts. This gentleman, Nick Urson, he's a food and beverage director at a hotel in New Orleans. He was one of our guests. I had an executive chef from one of the Marriott properties in San Francisco speak to us. A wide variety of conversations that you actually have one-on-one conversations with them and ask them questions on how you can actually make your job easier for them. And then this is my friend Tahira. This is a written quote. And John, if you've got that audio quote too, we can do that too. But Tahira knows how to plan inclusive events. She actually has a book on it, but she learned a lot from taking this course. And I really appreciate that she says that, because it's not easy. And I don't know all the answers, and I'm going to learn something from you too, or I'm going to learn something from Nick, or I'm going to learn something from Tahira, but it's what I've done is culminated all of that into this 8-week course to help you and help the industry. And so you can get that course now for $997. If you've got any funding at the end of the year for training, use it as a tax write-off right now, right? It's $997. And thank you, Heather. Heather has actually written a book on it. I've got it somewhere on my bookshelf over here. But I appreciate that, Heather. Thank you so much. But get it right now before it starts January 9th, and it'll run 8 weeks. And if you sign up actually by December 15th, and actually I'll extend that for you all today because December 15th is in 2 days. If you sign up by the 18th of this month, I will give you these meal cards. So you saw this meal card that I have here. I've got packages of them. Get down here real quick and find one. You've got there you go. You've got full packages of them. There's 50 cards per pack. And I've got 36 different flavors or different dietary restrictions that you can utilize and give to your attendees. I will give you 6 packs of these of your choice. You get to pick for signing up if you sign up before December 18th. So I hope you think about it. And again, thank you for being here, because this is the first step in really understanding and accommodating your dietary restrictions of your attendees. Does anybody have any Q&A for me? I am here to ask questions just like I am in the course.
If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or feel free to unmute.
Yeah, please come up and ask questions. Anybody?
Heather's got one. What's the worst thing you've seen, heard, or experienced on the food side?
Oh my goodness. What I used it briefly. Is like there was a food and beverage director that he had put out. We were serving chipped beef and gravy. I did not pick that menu. I was just there on site working it. And it said contains pork, because it was the gravy label. And I'm like, this is gravy. I'm like, gravy is made with milk and flour, right? And he literally looked at me and said, I don't cook. How would I know that? And I mean, that to me was one of the worst ones that I've seen. And Dana, going back to the question on protein, what is the best way to add it for vegetarians? Well, there's a lot of, you've got quinoa, which is a great option. A lot of vegetables actually have protein in them, but thinking about, bean options or legumes and beans, quinoa, and the lentils, Heather just wrote in there, she is vegan, so she's got that. But it's really thinking about those different vegetables that you can do, but I think the beans and the quinoa are a great option to serve vegetarians, but just make sure you're not serving them at every single event. And Heather, that's another nightmare that I had. I was working an event and I was told, and I was going to be on site for 21 days. And they're like, okay, you're going to have, on Mondays, you're going to have, garbanzo beans, curried garbanzo beans for lunch and breakfast and lunch. And for the next day, you're going to have black beans and rice. And then on Wednesday, you're going to have the curried garbanzo beans. And then on I was going to have beans for every single day for 21 days. And I'm looking at the food and beverage director like, really, you want to be around me for 21 days after having beans that much time? Tofu ramen made with chicken broth. My most recent horror. Yeah, Dana, that's another option is tofu. Seitan is another great protein, but that's a wheat based. That's so if you're serving that, that's going to be not good for your gluten-free individuals. Oh, and I love the fact that in Latin American, Indian, Middle Eastern, they have great vegetarian food options. Yeah, pick a menu item from that, and spice it up or spice it down depending on somebody who can have spicy foods or not. But mushrooms, not great for protein, but everyone knows that great for the flavor texture. Yes. But it does take having the conversations with your chefs up front, finding out what they can and cannot do, right? And what availability they have to creating options. Does anybody have a nightmare story that they can share of what they've been given or seen served to their attendees? John, our friend Jessie States was handed a plate of sliced carrots one time for her vegetarian meal during an awards banquet that she had paid like $90 to attend, and that's what she was given, right?
That's not,
mean,
and she's with Meetings Professional International.
Right. Mm-hmm. And a plate of broccoli. Yep. And the fact that you're paying, so let's see, you're paying right now, I'm just going to pull it out, for filet mignon, right? You're ordering a filet mignon and it's $99 plus tax, plus gratuity, and plus another 25% because whatever hotels are doing right now. Right. So that filet mignon is $165 and you've just you've asked for vegetarian options and they've been given a plate of carrots. Are you being charged $165 or the $99 plus for that plate of carrots? You shouldn't be. And Heather, fruit salad is, oh my gosh. There's another slide presentation that I do. And actually I think I show it on Thursday. It's like the bowl of berries. That's what, individuals with dietary restrictions are typically handed, is a bowl of berries as their desserts. So, to list out, and she ended up marking it herself. She tried telling my eggs were vegan. Oh my gosh, Heather or Dana, her eggs were vegan. Eggs are not vegan, that is for sure. Anne Marie posted, when doing tastings, I always make the culinary team give me vegetarian options as well to taste. 100% agree. You have to do that. There was another one event, Anne Marie, I was at, and I was working and I was on the site visit, and we were doing the tasting for 3 different food functions, and they brought in the food and nothing was labeled for the tasting. And we've been told we want gluten-free, we want dairy-free, we want these things. And when the chef came in, and he never got closer. He came in about 15 minutes after we were served the food to talk to us about the food. He never got closer than 5 feet from the table. So he never came and engaged with us. And then as he was talking to us, he put his arms over his chest and started walking backwards to lean against the wall and talk to us like this. And I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean, so you really need to have those conversations up front while you're doing this so that you can find out what that culinary team can do, is capable of doing, and what they're doing for the front of house staff too.
Tracy, can you give one final word to our live stream audience, and then we'll open it up to private Q&A for our Zoom guests?
Yeah, let me reach out to me, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for thinking about how to cater for your attendees, because it really does make an inclusive experience. It makes them feel wanted and appreciated. So I appreciate you being here, and let me know how I can help.
Thank you. You've been watching Meeting Menus, catering to the diverse dietary needs of event attendees. Thank you, Tracy.